Well, sunshine, man, am I glad you're here. We're having fun again. Stihl, I guess we never quit, so it's Stihl. Appreciate you coming back. What we're going to do today is have a continuation on the two-ring testing. The last time, it was good test. There was a lot of information in there that we gathered, but it wasn't specifically, you couldn't isolate any problems or gains down to the two-ring thin lower tension rings, because they need more modifications on the last set of rings. And the first set of 1.2 millimeter rings, that piston had timing cut into the skirt of it and the crown of it for transfer timing and intake timing. So it wasn't 100% good. So if you guys remember, I took it apart, put my good set of broken end rings in it, thinned those down, and we lost some horsepower. Actually, in doing the next test, I actually got a picture of the Loch Ness Monster. Figuratively speaking, I caught what was going on the dyno, and that was awesome. And I've got a chart for you at the end. It has to do with the heat saturation in the lower end, the effect of the gases going down, your combustion gases going down and mixing with your fuel charge in the lower case. And I'm sure you've all felt it. I've got it charted. You can see it. Two different pistons or two different ring combinations. One really shows it and the other one not so much. And I've always dealt with that in the past. Speaking of heat in the lower end, I've got a good chart coming up that's going to show how that heat was going in that bottom end earlier. You guys are going to have to get your thinking caps on. I've already basically developed a new dyno protocol, because I built this dyno in the wintertime and used it in the wintertime, so it was always getting a real cold air in here, which kept that bottom end cool. And I didn't have a problem with heat saturation in the bottom end. That bottom end ought to stay cooler than the cylinder, but I wasn't having a problem. I'm having a problem saturating that bottom end with heat. Number one, it's warmer, I assume, and number two, I'm getting blow by now, past my rings, more so. I developed a new dyno protocol for myself to try to be able to corner that and know that. And basically it's by running the saw hotter, or heating it up more before I run the dyno, and never taking that first run and this and that. There's a couple things I'll do. And another thing is, I'm not sure I don't want to run the dyno backwards and take the inertia out of the equation. We'll have to see. I kind of like it. And it's lower horsepower yet because it's taking the inertia out of the equation. Half of it. We'll get into that in another video. There's a lot more thinking of that than what I'm just saying right now. We'll discuss it and see how you guys want me to run that dyno, guys. This channel for everybody, so get in there and tell me what you like to see. It gives us a lower number, but if we was only worried about higher numbers, well, I could make this thing look like it made 10 horsepower if that's what I wanted to do. I could crank it down real fast and use the inertia in the flywheel. If it had a 5-pound flywheel on this thing, it might take it 3 minutes to rev up, and if you crank it, if you run a 5 or a 10 second, I've seen people on dynos run a 1 second run. Well, all you're doing there is pulling the inertia out of the flywheel. You got horsepower, but you're just pulling the inertia out of the flywheel. You're just hitting a spike, kind of like pulling a semi out of a ditch with a U-go and a jerk strap. You hit that jerk strap at 100 mile an hour with a U-go, that semi will probably move. Or the license plates will come off the U-go, one or the other. Guys, I don't want to BS anybody. Yeah, I can put big numbers on this saw. And speaking of that, we're actually showing, where was we at, like 4.3 horsepower right before we started this. We've been up to 4.69. And you're like, well, why ain't you still there? Well, because that was with 10 degrees timing advance, a longer decomp plug, and the other spark plug. I've taken those three things back out. Number one, because I test heat in the decomp plug, so I've got a decomp plug made for testing heat, so that's out. The spark plug, yeah, I don't know. I'm just back to run the regular spark plug. And if I got to pull that flywheel off, when I clock it at 10 degrees, I don't put a key in it. So I want to know that timing's right back to the same place every time, instead of getting it at 9 or 11. And if I make a little minor change and it looks big, or it looks like it gained big or lost big comparatively, I don't want to think, well, maybe my timing was off 1 degree, and that's where it was at. So, guys, that's why our numbers are a little bit lower. I'm not too heated up about the numbers. I like them. I love being able to quantify stuff, but I'm not necessarily worried about, hey, I'm not shooting for this number and we got to have that. That's not what I'm about here. And I'm not knocking that people are proud that they've made a saw that makes X amount of horsepower. I'm not knocking that. Because I'll be that way. When we get this all buttoned up, I'll probably give her one good cold run with no heat saturation and just see what kind of numbers we can get out of it. I'm not saying that I ain't human. What I'm trying to say is I'm trying the very best I can to be impartial. Okay? Like I say, I think I caught a picture of the Loch Ness Monster on dyno. And what we're going to do is call this cause and effect. The last video, what we're going to call the effect was combustion gases getting in my lower cylinder, and the cause would be they're getting by the rings. But let's call the part that the gas is getting by the rings, let's call that the effect and find out the cause of that. Okay, we can say lower tension, right? And we know part of it is due to lower tension because in this video I've gas ported the rings, okay, which help put more tension on the sides. It helped blow that ring out, and we gained some horsepower back. Okay, but there's still another cause. And I was talking to that guy I like talking to. He's just full of good information, and he told me about another issue. We was talking just about in general, and I got to paying attention in here, and I've got that problem, and I want to show you that in just a second. And that is what I'm going to call part of the cause of the heat saturation in the lower end. It has nothing to do with rings. Not one. Well, the rings are in the middle. You can blame it on the rings, but the rings aren't the problem. The weaker rings exacerbated the problem. But that's not, my peacocks are hollering, it's raining out. And that's the only reason I'm getting a video right now. It's raining out, so I'm rained out. Sorry about that. You might hear rain on the roof. And I know audio is the worst thing to make you want to click off a video. Please stick with me. We'll get past it. Thank you. Another couple things we got going on coming up is we're going to fix that problem, and I'm going to show you that problem here in just a second. We're going to fix that problem. That'll be in an upcoming video, but the next upcoming video will probably be moving that offset cylinder, or offsetting that cylinder, moving that cylinder forward. I found a way to visually quantify the vibrations on this saw for you guys. I think it'll work. Guys, stick around, subscribe or whatever, so you don't miss that next video. Offsetting this cylinder, I think, is going to be a neat video. And I'm going to tell you right now, I do not like promising stuff and not delivering. So I'm telling you right now, this cylinder is already offset, and I've already put her on dyno. I love it. Show you what the horsepower results were, and show you how I did it. That'll be on another video. So, but it's already done. So I try not to tease something that I never get to. I try not to do that here, guys. And I'll be 100% honest with you. This 2-ring video we're showing today is not going to be the be-all end-all of that. I've got an email sent in to Ryan at Wolf Creek Saws. Hopefully he can get me some more 1.5 millimeter, 47.5 millimeter rings for this saw. And I got some more testing I want to do. But part of that's going to have to be after I have to do this next mod. And that'll be its own video as well. I've not done that yet, so hopefully I'll get that pretty soon. Since it's important, that other issue I found, I want to show you that right quick here on paper. I want you guys to get your thinking caps on, your bifocals, and your smart duds. Get your smart duds on right now. Clean out from under your fingernails with a toothpick and dig out your ears with your keys and get ready, because I've got something to show you. Alright guys, I'm looking at this upside down with you. Here's the piston. And the dome on the piston. This has got a dome piston in it. There's the edge of the piston. There's the edge of the cylinder, and basically the shape of the cylinder, okay, and combustion chamber. Now, there's your rings, okay. We've got a dome on this piston that goes all the way to the outside. It's almost like a French curve. It's not the same radius all the way through here. I just drew that with a trash can lid, so forgive me. But the top of the piston, or the top of the cylinder here, the squish band area, is about 200 thousandths, okay? Now my squish right here is 18 thousandths. I've got 18 thousandths squish on that, okay? But that dome continues to go down. Out here at the edge, we are at 40 thousandths. At some point, whatever we trap here is going to want to be squeezed this way, right? That is no good. So, I think that's exacerbating our problem of blowing stuff by our rings due to this shape of the top of the piston. This is basically perpendicular to the cylinder wall. The squish band is in that cylinder is basically perpendicular to the cylinder wall, but the piston's domed. So therefore, we are causing a triangle that's trying to push the air that way instead of a nice triangle trying to push the air towards the squish band. And you're thinking, well, that's only 200 thousandths, right? Well, this is and I can't write upside down. This is a 44.7, which is 1.750 give or take, inch and 3/4 bore. Well, 200 thousandths of that, and that's all the way around. So that would be 400 thousandths, 200 thousandths on this side, 200 thousandths on that side, which leaves us 1.350 in between here and here. And the reason I mention that, guys, they claim the squish area ratio, this is the motorcycle people and the two-stroke guys, a good squish area ratio is 45 to 55%. I don't know if that holds true for chainsaws or not, but my squish area ratio in here, and I wanted to mention that, and I just wanted to mention it, is 41%, okay, which isn't too bad. And I was talking to another guy today on the phone while I was building chicken wire fence to keep rabbits out of my garden. Man, they're eating me up. He said he had about a 3/8 of an inch squish band in a 45 millimeter cylinder. So he's running up there around 67%. He's got 67% of this area on top of the piston is squish band. Guys, and anybody that knows circles and area knows the farther out you get, the more your area is. Kind of like taking the inside lane. This area here is 41% of this whole area. This is almost half the area from here to here. That's 4/10 of the area from here to here. The other 6/10 is just from here inside. So guys, what I'm doing is I'm squishing 40% of my intake charge the wrong way. And I imagine that's forcing that down past them rings instead of slowly guiding that up. So I wanted to show you that problem. How I fixed that's going to be on another video, but I wanted to show you that problem for this video because I think it's important in our 2-ring testing, because the weaker rings are going to exacerbate that problem. That's my thinking. Guys, if I earned it somewhere in this video, give me that hitchhiker emblem down there. Just jab on that. If you hate my video, give me that Julius Caesar one there whenever they, when them guys out there fighting that lion or whatever, you know, and he gives them that business. Whichever one, I don't care. Let me know how I'm doing. Thanks. Well, guys, I hope you ain't afraid of worms, because we have opened up a pile of worms. Seen the guy doing thin rings, reduced tension rings on the inner tube, and of course he said, yeah, that's thin, man, you really reduced, you can feel it. Well, my resolution on my computer ain't too good, so I don't know how to, I can't feel what he's feeling. So I don't know how much is too much or how much ain't enough. So I've got these 3 sets, and I think I figured out a way to measure the tension. I can't explain to you the difference in tension. It is just drastic. I want to measure it. I want to make it quantifiable. I want to make it so if anybody's watching this and they want to try to duplicate it or stay away from what I'm doing, they can know how bad I did it or how good I did it, one or the other. I like to put numbers to it so somebody else, you know, playing the home game, they can try it too. And that's all I'm doing. I'm playing the home game. I'm just putting it on the inner tube for y'all. I'll set you up over here. I've got a scale mounted to the wall. I've got a little groove cut and a magnetic deal. I can hold that ring in there. I've got a piece of 15 thousandths shim in there. These rings were all about 11 thousandths on ring gap, so we're close. I'm gonna keep putting pressure on, or I'm gonna put pressure on that to hold that, and I'm gonna let pressure off of it until that drops out, and that's gonna be our measurement. Scientific? I don't think so. Best I can do? Yeah, so far. Follow me over there. Okay, guys, I've showed you before what I do here on. I just fold an envelope in half and tape it, cut the flap in half, and I can keep my rings separate, top and bottom. I think it's important once they're breaking in. Another thing is, I'm going to be having my head in here awful close, so I got my hat off. Don't laugh at the back of my fat head. Hopefully you guys will be able to see it. What I'm going to do is, we're zeroed out. I'll be able to hold this. I'll be able to hold this ring gap closed. I got a groove cut right there, and I got to hold it straight, and I got to have that ring gap about straight down. It takes quite a bit to close it. It takes over. We're on grams, kilograms here. But I'm gonna hang this in there until it drops out, and when it drops out, I got to try to release it slow enough where we can get a good measurement, and I can't brace my hand against here because that throws it off. So I got to get in here close, guys. I'm sorry if my head gets in your way. As long as I can see the measurement later, I'll get them for you. That was the top ring, guys. Let you know that was the top ring of just an unmodified set of ring, and I can kind of watch this ring and make sure it's parallel plumb to each other, because if I turn it sideways, it turns that plastic sideways, so I can see that if that plastic turns, I know I don't have a straight push on it. Let's do a third time. No, those are the 1.5 millimeter rings. There's the top ring, and these should maybe be different because those are gas ported on top. Now they're not gas ported as much as the 1.2 millimeter rings. Quit shaking like a dog pooping peach seeds. Right there is about where we dropped. Now we'll go to the 1.2 millimeter rings, and it's gas ported, and it's gas ported twice as much. There's 16, or actually there's probably 15 because I skipped the one where the ring gap's at. Went for an odd amount that way. That's the first one I gas ported. There she is. There's tension on her. That's the 1.2 millimeter rings. Man, they ain't got no tension. And this one actually ran better than the 1.5 millimeter rings, but those rings were scored a little. And of course this one was on the I don't think I could have got it any closer than that. It slipped out. That was perfect. This one ran pretty good, but the timing on the piston was different. So, you know, I know I haven't done a good job on this. I know I haven't done a good job on this for you guys because I've had too many variables that I can't remove, or I didn't. I wasn't set up. I didn't have enough sets of rings to remove the variables. Let's see where we're at. Oh, got sideways on it. That's wanting to turn sideways. Let me get a twist out of that rope if it's got some. There we go. Let me try her one more time. This is the bottom ring on 1.2 millimeter. There we go. Well, dadgum, that was more fun to burrow monkeys, wasn't it? Okay, here's what we got. The top unmodified ring off this saw. It took 116 grams to hold that shim. That ring measured 75 thousandths. The bottom ring took 1,174 grams, so just a little bit more But that ring measured 76 thousandths. It was another thousandth difference, so it changed us. It changed us 50 grams, so it ain't taking much to change us, right? The top ring, which is scalloped on the 1.5 millimeter rings, it measured 0.068 inches, so it was 7 thousandths down. Okay, it only took 748 grams to hold that. The bottom ring was same measurement, 0.068, and it took 731. So they're similar. They're 12 grams difference. That's probably the margin of error, I would say, at least, wouldn't you? And that's an average of 3 tries each one. So that means the 1.5 to 1.5 millimeter ring, that's a 61% increase from what it takes to hold it here to what it takes to hold it here. It takes 61% more to close this one than this one. So that's a pretty good reduction. Now the thin ring's a 1.2 millimeter thin ring. The top ring being scalloped, it was 63 thousandths. And I don't know, I'll have to assume it started at 75 thousandths. I didn't measure it before, but I think it was 75 or 73. I brought it down to 63 thousandths. We'll claim I took 12 thousandths off of it. I'm not certain. I don't remember. It only took 599 grams for the tension on this one. So this one's less than this one. That thin ring's less than this thin ring. Now the bottom, it was 0.58. It was 2 thousandths shorter, or 2 thousandths thinner, but it wasn't scalloped. I scalloped the heck out of this, you know. So it's 15 thousandths down, and it still took a little bit more. It took 740 grams to hold that. Guys, so I don't know. There's a lot of things we don't know, a lot of things to think about. So between the thin 1.2 rings and this one here, it takes 1.96. It takes 96% more to close this one than this one. This one's 1.96 to 1, if you will. This one's 1.61 to 1, if you will. Maybe that's an easier way to put it. What it makes me think is I'm trying to learn this ring tension, and of course I don't have a feel for it, so that's why I'm trying to quantify it. I don't think I'll take the next ones down as much. I'm thinking if a guy takes 2 or 3 thousandths off of it, he's going to be all right. I think it'll help, but that's in the future. Let's continue on with this one. Here's what we wanted to see. We got the gas ported top ring in the red line. Both these rings are thin. The only difference is the gas porting on the top ring. The red line is the gas ported one. You can see we went from 3.99 peak horsepower, and it was a little faster. It was up around 9660 where it peaked out, and 4.29 peak horsepower, but it was down on RPMs to 8529, which isn't a big deal. It was over it the whole time. It just hung in there longer and actually climbed torque. Sometimes the torque chart's what you want to look at a little bit. The torque just kept climbing. Now to compare this gas ported thin rings to my old backup rings, so theoretically neither one of them seated, we seen about the same thing. We climbed torque on the broken in gas ported rings as the RPM dropped down. We gained on torque, and we gained peak horsepower, 4.29, which again was 8529. The backup rings, it peaked out a little higher at 9821, but it only peaked at 4.22 horsepower, which is not much. You'll notice I got this marked faster and colder, meaning for shins and grins, I did a faster dyno run while the saw was cooler. Guys, that's where you gotta trust your dyno or dyno guy or the operator. I pulled about a 10-second run. Usually I do about a 30-second run. I pulled a 10-second run, and the saw was a little cooler. It was still warmed up, but cooler. Okay, and the reason I did that, I want to show you. What I want to show you is this is backup rings. This is full set of rings that are not thinned. hotter versus colder. Now, I don't usually do a cool dyno run, and the only reason I did on these twin rings, and I'll get into that in just a minute, I wanted to show you the difference between running a saw a little cooler and running a little saw a little hotter on the dyno. These rings were exaggerating that over what I've seen on a normal ring, but I do want to show you the difference. My backup rings, cold, blue being cold, 4.22 horsepower at 9831. Okay, and we'd expect that. The backup rings, we dropped 0.2 of a horsepower by heating it up, and it's not hot. It's been up to 300 plus degrees and cooled back down to just below 250 to start the dyno run, and it's a little bit longer run like I run. I usually run about a 20-second run, so you're going to see a little bit more heat saturation in this backup rings. And the reason it's working here too is these rings aren't seated in. I'll get into that in just a minute. Same with thin rings. I want to show you something on that. She just dropped off about 6,000 at about 6,000 RPM. She just dropped right off there, and that's what we were seeing in the last video. That's what I was hoping you guys would pick up on that last video when I was actually sawing. Guys, you can make a heck of a bunch of difference, and it wasn't cold. It's 80 degrees outside, and the saw was warmed up. I just didn't have it as hot. So the red line's by no means overheated, but it's hot. It's warmed up and hot. We're going to lose some RPMs there, and I want to show you that, show you this, but I've got one more thing I want to show you right here in the middle. What we have here, we got 3 lines. We got the old 2 rings that were broken in at its current configuration, and everybody knows we've been ahead of that before with timing advance and everything else, which raised all this, but we're back to basically stock as far as timing, spark plugs and all that. It's just easier to replicate from dyno run to dyno run, so I went backwards a little bit. But you'll see that the good 2 rings that's been seated in, they probably got 20 tanks on them. It had just a little bit more horsepower, and the max torque was higher. It started dropping off about 7,200. Bear in mind, this is the green one's warmed up saw versus these 2 runs are cooler. This thinned out 2 ring is giving me hope. And the real neat part of this whole experiment boils down to these charts right here. There's 2 charts here. I'm going to go over them both with you. The next one's going to show it a little bit different, and I think a little bit better. What this is, when I do my heat pull and pull this down to whatever RPMs it'll hold at 10,000 RPMs for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60 seconds. I just did that like every 5 seconds in there, give or take, got a data point. Now what you'll notice is the green line is the set of backup rings. They're not blowing by bad. Those are the non-gas ported ones. Now the gas ported ones did a little bit better, but I want to show you the exaggeration here. We were down on horsepower, which is not a surprise. But we went from 3.8 horsepower to about 3.65 over the heat range, which I actually started this one out a little bit cooler. The reason this one here was up there at 265 is that's where I finally got it settled in while I was running the dyno. I usually run it down to about 240 and hope to have the dyno settled in at 10,000 RPMs at a good pull by the time it hits 250. I was at 265 by the time I got it settled in, which would have been a bigger hill to climb for the green saw, or for the green line, which is just my backup rings. But we started out like 3.95, 3.94 horsepower here and wound up at 3.93 horsepower there, 1/100 of a horsepower from 0 to 60 seconds. We hung in there kind of like a hair in a biscuit, kind of up and down, because I'm having to adjust that the whole time as the saw warms up, and as the fluid warms up it flows easier, so I got to adjust that valve just a little bit. But this one was it heated up about the same, along the same curve, but it dropped horsepower a lot faster. What I want to show you now is this next chart. Now the chart on top showed the non-gas ported rings. These these are the gas ported thin ring versus a regular ring. I pulled that saw down to 10,000 RPMs at 250 degrees, and I pulled that until it hit over 300 on the head temperature. And this is the horsepower that I got. The chart runs from 3.75 horse to 4 horse, so you can kind of see. But the blue line is the regular rings, and that's 3 runs in a row of letting it cool back down to 240 degrees and hitting it again, and cooling it down to 240 degrees and hitting it again. I think what's happening is we're getting blow-by gases from the combustion down in, heating up our lower end. Usually you got ambient temperature going in there, so actually your bottom end below the piston is usually cooler. Now look how fast the thin rings declined, one run after another. You can see the decline, and these 2 runs were very similar. So what I think I've still got going on is gases blowing by my thin gas ported rings. They show a good run in the beginning, but as the saw gets hot, it's heating up my bottom end, and the saw runs like a ball of fire for a little bit, but the longer you run it, the more heat saturated the bottom end. It's more exaggerated. It's exaggerating the heat saturation in the bottom end. I think we got some things to do to try to fix that, which is probably a new cylinder, that's don't have these scores, a better cylinder, and not thinning my rings so much. So guys, I'm still in a learning process. It's going to take another trial or two at this, but I'm going to carry you guys along for the ride. Appreciate you being here. Next thing we're going to do, like I say, is get that cylinder moved forward, and that's going to be a pretty neat one. So there you go. I just told on myself of how you can basically run a dyno and make it cooler and hotter. And that's just, I'm honest with myself. I don't play that trick and try to show you guys, but I wanted to show you that to let you know how we're going to start running that dyno just a little bit different, and making sure that don't happen in the future. Don't miss that cylinder offset video. It's pretty neat. If I earned it, give it a thumbs up. If I didn't, don't. Subscribe or whatever. Find a way to keep checking in with me, because we got some pretty cool stuff coming up. Thank you.